Welcome to this session titled From the Beaches of Normandy to a Michigan Blended Classroom, Librarian Support in the Real and Virtual World. I'm Margaret Lincoln, District Librarian for Lakeview Schools in Battle Creek, Michigan. I appreciate the chance to share with you today an exciting online learning project involving collaboration with my social studies colleagues Scott Durham and Jake Zimmerman, who will be joining us later in the session, technology permitting. We'll begin with a juxtaposition of two images. This photo is of Lower Saxony. Does anyone recognize the landmark? This picture was taken by teacher Scott Durham at Bergen-Belsen. Scott himself was struck by the resemblance to the view of the Kellogg Forest in our own locale of southwest Lower Michigan. In today's presentation, we'll connect those two images and show how a world travel adventure from abroad was brought home on a personal level to students back in the States. First, we'll look at prior collaborations and projects that Scott and I have undertaken. Next, we'll explain how Scott's DeMasso Fellowship provided a new online learning experience for students. 3, we'll examine how the blended learning approach has been updated for teaching a Holocaust unit. And 4, we'll conclude with a recent example of teacher-librarian collaboration involving a second round of teaching from abroad by Lakeview instructor Jake Zimmerman. And finally, 5, we'll invite your questions and discussions as we launch a connection to my colleagues Scott and Jake back in Battle Creek. Let's begin by looking at prior collaborations and projects. My first collaborative project with Scott Durham goes back to 2000, when we were selected as American Memory Fellows. We spent a week at the Library of Congress becoming versed in digitized primary source materials, and we developed a unit on World War I that remains published on the library's teacher page. From World War I, the natural progression was to World War II and a focus on the Holocaust. In January 2003, we brought the Schindler exhibition from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum to Battle Creek, Michigan. In 2005, the Art Center of Battle Creek was selected as a site for Life in Shadows, Hidden Children and the Holocaust. This major United States Holocaust Memorial Museum traveling exhibition, the first to include major primary artifacts, otherwise only traveled to Chicago's Spertus Museum and to the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York. Classroom visits to the Art Center were organized. Our next Holocaust online project involved setting up a blog to allow Scott students to engage in discussion of Gerda Klein's memoir, All But My Life, with area students and senior citizens. Gerda Klein, the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, spoke to 1,900 students at Battle Creek's W.K. Kellogg Auditorium. Her presentation was streamed live via Merit Network in Ann Arbor. In 2011, we took a broader approach. Under the theme, Remember Our Past, Celebrate Our Progress, and Commit Ourselves to a Better Tomorrow, we brought a traveling exhibit, curated by Dr. David Pilgrim, from the Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia to Battle Creek, and we developed supporting events. Coach Herman Boone, whose story was recounted in Remember the Titans, visited the Hateful Things exhibit and spoke to the community. Returning to the topic of the Holocaust, Scott and I have collaborated with Holocaust survivor and Michigan-based artist Dr. Miriam Brisk. Miriam's book, The Stones Weep, which I co-authored with her, contains Miriam's artwork and supporting lesson plans contributed by teachers, including Scott Durham. Scott's lessons contained in The Stone's Weep have been developed into a Moodle unit available on the Michigan Learns online portal. Students viewed Miriam's artwork and responded to a writing prompt in this lesson, and the functionality was then incorporated into subsequent online lessons. Miriam Brisk brought her newest exhibit, Scroll of Remembrance, to the Battle Creek Art Center in 2014. Some 1,600 students and adults viewed that exhibit, and an Echoes and Reflections workshop was held at Lakeview High School for 52 educators from all over the state of Michigan. We learned some important lessons through these prior collaborations. The importance of maximizing your contacts and resources. It is also vital to seek out expertise in areas where you do not have expertise. Be bold. Do not be afraid to try something you've never done before. There is safety in collaboration. Be willing to put in the hard work required. Be willing to let someone else do the work by giving up control. And be open to new opportunities. Then, a new opportunity for an online learning collaboration presented itself. Scott was awarded the Damaso International Fellowship, offering an opportunity of a lifetime to travel abroad for 3 months and to instruct students virtually. The next series of slides show how the various challenges were addressed to find workable solutions. Curriculum design was guided by Michigan High School Social Studies Standards, Common Core, and by our American Association of School Librarians Standards for the 21st Century Learner. We familiarized ourselves with blended learning models before trying out a flexible approach. We utilized Michigan's e-library database articles and e-reference material as instructional resources. We were not tied to a particular device or application, but considered all hardware and software options. We developed a more college-oriented schedule, whereby students worked independently 2 days per week, choosing to complete online work in school, in the library, or having the option to go off campus during fourth block, which was the last period of the day. We developed engaging assignments with real-world connections. For example, Scott had visited Sir Nicholas Winton in London in 2013. Students then wrote letters to Sir Winton the following fall. Moodle was chosen as the course content management system. Lessons were designed and lectures recorded before Scott took off for Europe in July 2013. Here's an abbreviated version of a screencast used to introduce the course layout to students. Hello, World at War students. This is Mrs. Lincoln. We're going to take a quick tour of the Moodle site that will be used for our course. Once you've logged in at the district level, you'll be taken to this home page. As a Lakeview High School student, you have a unique opportunity this semester to be part of a blended learning project. Mr. Durham is the recipient of the first ever Damaso International Study Fellowship from the Battle Creek Community Foundation, and he'll be instructing his World at War classes online. From June to October, Mr. Durham is touring landmarks in Europe and Asia. While traveling, he'll coordinate with LHS staff to virtually offer lessons to you on culture and history. LHS students have been grouped into Cohort A and Cohort B for this blended learning class. A third section of World at War will make use of the online content as well. I want to look at a typical week's content, and I'm going to use week 2 as an example first because it is the first normal 5-day week that we'll have in the course. There will always be a recap of the content, and you see that for week 2 we focus on the impact of war on individuals, families, and nations. We compare and contrast battles in
World War I and II, and then look at the emergence of a new result of war, shell shock, battle fatigue, or PTSD. We use the ugliness scale to accurately compare battles from across history. And there will always be a graphic that often leads to a primary source from the Library of Congress or National Archives. This particular graphic is about the village of Somme in France and shows the effects of the devastation of World War I. I'm going now to the actual modules for week 2.
The Week 3 modules incorporated an activity from our original American Memory lesson on World War I, whereby students explored a gallery of World War I speakers from the Library of Congress. Students accessed acoustic recordings that were made between 1918 to 1920. Primary source analysis could now be done using the library's new online tool, which prompts students with guiding questions and allows them to create a PDF file of their observations and reflections that could then be emailed to Mr. Durham. The next series of slides gives examples of the online interactions between our Michigan classroom and remote locations, such as the beaches of Normandy.
So, Frankfurt, Celle, and then Berlin, Germany. Then we went to Prague in the Czech Republic. Then Krakow, Poland, Lublin, Poland, Warsaw, Poland. Then I went to Barcelona, Spain. Marseille, France. Le Chambon, France. Pisa, Rome, Florence, and Venice in Italy. Excuse me. Cortina in Italy, Geneva, Switzerland, Tel Aviv, Israel, Istanbul, Turkey, Dublin, Ireland, London, England, Brussels, Belgium, Bruges, Belgium, Amsterdam, and then now, where am I at? I think I'm in Paris.
Yeah, I asked how many of you have gotten onto Moodle.
How many show of hands on Moodle right now?
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that we understand all the assignments from week 1, because on Monday we're starting with like what happens in war, and it's going to get kind of ugly and bloody and disgusting.
As the result of detailed planning, students were able to access pre-recorded lectures and then have learning concepts reinforced during the live interactions with Mr. Durham.
I kind of want you to envision, like, pretend World War I is like this tissue box, right? And so everything inside World War I is what happens inside the box. All the killing, all the battles, the Battle of the Marne, the Battle of the Somme, the unrestricted submarine warfare, the Zimmerman telegram, poison gas, trench warfare. I'm not sure if I said that, but all that takes place inside. So we know we have the causes of the war coming in, those things I told you. We have bad leaders, we have imperialism and colonialism, we have the idea of hate and revenge, we have the people, all causing World War I, and so it all happens here.
The world comes out of the war box, and the hope is that the causes that sent the world into the war box should be fixed when the world comes out of the war box. Do you understand that? Yeah, so the war should solve the problems that it caused. And maybe some of you have been like in a fight when you were little, you know, and like you and a friend fought over a baseball or something, but as soon as the fight's over, you became friends again because the fight kind of solved the problem that it caused, or that caused it.
Now we have an example of a video edited while on location.
As I turned the corner, I was up in the guard tower of Birkenau, and I could see the entire camp from up here. This is the famous camp that's featured in Schindler's List. We've seen it in many other films. And when I got up here, I think the thing that really surprised me was how huge this place is, and the magnitude and the organization and the effort that was put forth to kill all the Jews of Europe after the final solution that was brought together at the Wannsee conference in the video you already saw. Here's the main rail line. This is where all the Jews were offloaded on the trains, and then they began to walk. So this section, I don't know why I filmed this, but it's just us walking down the path. And I'm going to just let you listen. And this thing kind of blew me away because I thought about all the people that had made this same walk, and the silence that you hear and the sound of the rocks under our feet, I think must have been the sound that the Jews heard as well. And you get a feeling of helplessness here. Like there's nowhere you can go. Everywhere you turn there are these barbed wire fences. And I'm sure at the time there were guards and, smells and smoke.
And that was so much more meaningful because students heard the words of their own teacher. Another Google Hangout transmission included a guest presentation by World War II fighter pilot Joe Calvert, whom Scott met while touring in Germany. Calvert flew the famed route of the Hump at the eastern end of the Himalayas.
Well, first, let me just describe what the Hump is. Some people may not know that.
They have no idea.
Okay. The Hump was a air route from Upper Assam Valley in India. It's sort of like a finger pointing up northeast from Calcutta toward the Himalaya Mountains. The men that were based in India were flying every day, or if they flew every day, not necessarily every day, because you needed some time off. But they flew into Kunming.
And this Google Hangout transmission from Moscow added a personal element from the librarian.
Mr. Durham, have you been on the subway?
Not yet. I think that's tomorrow. I might try to hop on a subway tour, but I've been told that I must do that because they are so beautiful.
Right. Chandeliers, gorgeous decorations.
So Ms. Lincoln, do you want to share a little bit about when you were here and what it was like?
I sent Mr. Durham a photo of yours truly in Red Square when I was a student studying with the University of Michigan in France. So this was sort of like spring break trip to Poland and Russia. And in Moscow, this picture of me in Red Square, and in the background, there is a full contingent of Russian soldiers in their long coats. And I'm looking, happy as anything. And Mr. Durham picked right up on the fact of the difference in the political climate. All right, so this was 1970, 43 years ago, kind of the height of the Cold War, or things were still very tense. Yet I felt safe. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, look at all these soldiers. That would freak me out.
Well, the Russian connection might be costly, but it's coming through loud and clear, and all along the way, you've made it work, so we really appreciate it at our end.
Well, it's good to hear you say that. Thank you.
In 2014-2015, following his return from abroad, Scott envisioned a new instructional model for teaching the Holocaust. Emphasis was placed on pre- and post-war events and not solely on the war years or final solution. An additional Part 5, revisiting the concept of a meaningful and purposeful life, completed the model. The course continued to be taught in a blended fashion using Moodle. The new instructional model offered activities and assessments which students completed online and face-to-face in the traditional classroom. Students were introduced to 6 key individuals, survivors and victims, whose lives were followed through diarist excerpts, readings, and film. In order to promote critical thinking and active reflection when viewing video material, the Web 2.0 tool Edpuzzle was employed. Embedded librarian support was provided through an Ask a Librarian email link, support for note-taking, access to supplemental vetted web sources on the Holocaust, and RSS newsfeed, bringing in updated articles from New York Times and Gale Cengage databases. A supplemental activity to the Holocaust unit involved the use of the USC Shoah Foundation Liberator testimony. Lakeview students also participated in a United States Holocaust Memorial Museum project. In an attempt to determine what the U.S. and average citizen knew about the Holocaust, students accessed historic newspapers of the era, provided to us online via our local Willard Public Library and the Battle Creek Enquirer newspaper. In a final project of the unit, students submitted their own opinion pieces or creative reflections to the Battle Creek Enquirer with the hope that some 50 years from now, their words and actions will not be forgotten. This school year, your students can join in the Holocaust Museum's Citizen History Project, in which people around the country will examine reporting in local and regional newspapers from the 1930s and 40s for articles on specific events in Holocaust history. Now, in 2015, we've extended the teacher-librarian online collaborative model. Jake Zimmerman was another Damaso Fellowship recipient. He traveled throughout Europe, Asia, and Africa, teaching from abroad for a 6-week period in the spring at the end of the past school year. A Moodle site was again set up to facilitate instruction. The Gale Cengage database, World History in Context, provided quality primary and secondary source materials. Instruction was personalized. Mr. Zimmerman visited the grave of his great-uncle and included a memoir written by his other uncle. It meant a lot to our students to see this original grave marker. And here are words and images from the memoir. Social media made learning relevant, and you want to be sure to check out Mr. Zimmerman's blog, YouTube channel, and Instagram account. Mr. Zimmerman also gave live presentations from abroad via Google Hangouts, and this is a very moving account from the battlefields of Normandy.
All right, I just started the broadcast, so it should be recording now. Does it say it on your end it's recording or anything, or is it just on my end?
Yeah, no, it doesn't tell us on our end, but if it says
Live. You're on live television in the interwebs. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what travels have been so far, and then I put together a quick presentation. So right in there, that's like one machine gun nest. And so one of those was my uncle, and this is his grave on the left. You see up in the right-hand corner those like rusted metal things? Those are some of the obstacles that the Germans put in the water, and then they rigged them with mines so that when you touched them they would explode. So I learned that my uncle, does everybody see on his grave where it says T Sergeant? That means he was a technical sergeant, so he was an engineer. His job was to go in first, if he could get to the beach, run up to the beach and secure it, but before that, in his platoon had to disarm all of the bombs on those obstacles. And so he got shot on the 6th. He went in at so the whole thing started at 6:30 in the morning, and he went in at just a little before 7. And he was shot. He lived until the 8th, so he kind of lingered for a couple days. And then they buried him in this temporary cemetery, which is down on the right. Once the war was over, they moved his remains to the permanent cemetery, and that's his grave marker. I'll see you in a few days.
Okay. Good luck, man.
Here are some references and resources mentioned in the presentation. We also have a link at the bottom to the actual slides with embedded links to help you out. We greatly appreciate your participation and look forward to hearing from you. Feel free to contact me, Margaret Lincoln, or Scott Durham, or Jake Zimmerman. Best of luck as you too venture into the world of online learning.